Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this session as part of iAdmin 2026. I can see that the numbers are starting to build up nicely, so we'll make a start. In this session, your presenter is Kevin Mort. Kevin's been part of the IBM community for over 25 years and is a former president, board member, and award-winning speaker with Common. The session he's going to cover today is what to consider when you're upgrading, lessons learned in environment planning. Performing a system migration or upgrade is a complex process where the difference between failure and success can be small. Kevin is here to offer help and advice on a smooth transition and the right questions that you need to ask. If you have any questions for Kevin throughout the session, please put them in the Q&A box on the right-hand side, and feel free to use the chat as well, and we'll do our best to answer those questions as we go. Any questions that we don't get to at the end of this session will be rolled over into day 2, and we've got a dedicated session to pick any of those up. Over to you, Kevin. Take it away.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. And I hope everyone's having a great day here at iAdmin 2026. We have a great day tomorrow, too. So we have a lot of great sessions on tap for you today. So we're talking about upgrades, lessons in environment planning. As Tom mentioned, my background, I've been around different areas of this industry for a long time, different partners, aspects of being a IT director to pre-sale consultant to guy on the ground doing installs. So a lot of these lessons, a lot of these things that we talk about from a planning and implementation perspective come from that experience over a long time. Now, at Service Express, we are looking at a variety of different ways to get you where you need to go in the best possible fashion. So part of this session is we're going to look through that roadmap. How do we work through a upgrade plan? How do we work through all the questions that we need to ask in order to get you there at the end of the day? What areas do we focus on? Which ones we might not as well? Things we might need to look at down the road. We have a lot of pitfalls, things that we run into every day, things that are questions that should have been asked, answered, aren't, that we need to deal with. And of course, there's always little guidelines, little tips and tricks of how we move ourselves down that path. And there is a path, and we look at these guiding principles that we talk about of let's be strategic, right? It's not always about, say, specific tactics that we're going after, specific line items, specific pieces, but really we want to look at a longer term goal. We want to look at the outcome we're trying to reach. We want to look at where you're going to be several years from now, not necessarily just today. Technology changes. We all know that. We all have looked at our systems as sitting off. I'm on a Power 8, and now we're at Power 11. Okay, what's the right time to upgrade from my Power 10 to my Power 11? I have customers right now who just bought a Power 10 a couple of years ago are now at a point where they want to go to a Power 11 already. Is that the right move? Is cloud the right move? Is internal storage versus external storage and all the differences that we have between those two? It's a very different world now than NVMe versus what we used to have on SAS disk. Our planning gets down to nitty-gritty oftentimes, and everybody doesn't want to jump on a whole bunch of different calls in order to work through all this stuff. But the reality is the more detail we get into, the more conversations we have, the more open and honest we are with each other about where we're trying to go, where we might want to be, and what's really feasible, especially in today's situations of costs keep increasing. We're all dealing with either data center fees, we're dealing with on-prem issues of power and cooling, or just simply the cost of parts and systems. We really need to understand all of these down to a detail level. Now, the way I look at a roadmap, the way I look at how we're actually working through this process, I want to know our goals. I want to start with goals. That's our baseline. So we start life. That's where we're going to look at, okay, what are my goals? Am I looking at a lease end? Is my lease ending tomorrow? Is it ending a month from now? A lot of our clients, we're looking at leases that end next year, 27, ending at the end of 26. Are we looking at support ends? Oh, the number of 7.4 upgrades we're doing right now, massive. Right? Plus, do we want to get to system end support on the hardware as well? 9 stuff, a lot of things happening that put us into that realm of, okay, support's a problem. Staffing is continuing a problem. We saw, I think, Steve Will's pitch earlier, where the number one thing on the list was IBMI support or staffing concerns, skills concerns, continues to be an issue. Applications, right? What application are you running? A lot of the platform exits we see are simply based on an application that's no longer available or an application that can't shift easily. Likewise, let's plan for refactoring code. Let's plan for using Bob, using whatever other technologies to ramp into something new that might actually work better for you longer term, the next phase. Discovery is the next step. So discovery, we get our goals. Let's talk about the details a little. Let's start to talk about the details. What's the environment look like now? I have customers on external storage today that hate it. I have customers on internal storage that really want to go to external storage. Why? Because they might want full system replication. They might want different types of other high availability options. So we need to look at BIOS. We need to look at other technologies, right? Do I have enough CPU, memory, and disk? There's some real critical pieces of information here when we start looking at cloud, for example. All of that's priced by CPU, memory, disk. We have to take that into consideration. We can't just do upgrades the way we used to do them. We're getting a lot more granular about that. User counts as well. And a lot of your systems might have unlimited users, so you might not be as concerned about that. But nonetheless, it's a consideration on all of these. Our capacity run rates, I'll show you a little later. I look at disk capacity, or I might look at processor capacity. How much of this am I using? Am I sitting at 50% today and only expect maybe 5 or 10% growth rate over the course of 5 years? Where does that put me down the road? How much capacity do I really need to look at on a new system, on a cloud instance? Our network types, we'll see that a little bit later too. Network has become a point where 1 gig, for example, is maybe on the way out for more customers than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. More clients have 10 gig options now, so we're moving more of them to 10 gig. We need to take that in consideration. There's other factors too. Next, we move to design. So we get our goals, we understand what the environment looks like. Now we're going to start putting something together. Well, I already talked about it. Are we going to use BIOS? We're going to use external storage. The results of the discovery move us into a design phase that lets us pick the right components, the right information from that helps us build what you need. So that's going to be a very important step for us to come back perhaps and ask more questions. Oh, I've gotten into sizing cloud, and you know what? Maybe we can do something a little bit different. Or we have a physical system, and do we really need the same number of cores on it that we had before? Maybe we could change that a little bit. Maybe we could change our disk capacity slightly. So we'll take that step and we'll work with that and then come back and we'll discuss it with you. We'll discuss it with your sales rep. We'll discuss it with internal folks. See, does this make sense? Let's level set. Does it make any sense to you? Does this process or what we've gone through so far, does this end result meet the goals that we set about initially? And then finally, and obviously in that course, pricing's going to be an issue, 3 or 5 year leases, all of the run rates that we talked about. And then finally, when we get through that process and finish pricing and discovery or finish discussing all of this, maybe we're at a final point, right? Now, that may be some months off. You still might need some revisions down the road. Things may change. But nonetheless, we've gone through a systematic roadmap, systematic process to get you there. So let's talk about some specific areas that we like to address. Back in the day, we used to be able to do what I always called the double mint configuration, right? If you all remember double mint gum, double your pleasure, double your fun, whatever. But the double memory, double disk used to be what we do. So everything was just, we're going to build a new system. We're just going to double the memory, double the disk, and we're good to go. Off we go. That doesn't really work anymore. And even if we do something like that or end up doing something like that, we're doing it in with a lot more information behind it to get us to that point, right? So CPU analysis, memory, and balancing that performance and cost, right? Especially again, once you start looking at cloud, that's a huge issue. CPU and disk are really the two biggest points that we're sizing those off of. But even into a new system, every generation processor on power is gaining some performance. So we're not at a point where we have to necessarily go the same exact number of cores, the same exact number of licenses or size that we were previously. So let's evaluate that. Memory as well. Obviously, more memory is always great. We'll have more memory. It's not as cheap as it used to be. We can't just go in and dump a whole bunch of memory in the system and say, yep, that's fine. So we need to look at that a little bit more detail. And it always comes down to that balance of performance and cost, especially today. Huge considerations, and we have to go through that process to make sure you're in the right place. Now, a lot of vendors out there, they're going to want to price software. They're very proud of it. They're going to price you in as many cores as they possibly can. IBM and others, we have ways through processor pools, for example, to cut that back. Say, well, you know what, on an HMC managed system, do I really want to deconfigure a whole bunch of cores? Maybe. There are cases for this. There's also situations where I might not want to do that if I think I might use some down the road. Maybe I'll leave them all activated, but I'm going to put them into a processor pool. I'm going to assign my partitions to that processor pool. And at that point, I'm going to balance out having to deconfigure cores, but also keep you in compliance, right? You don't want IBM sending you that nasty gram, which they'll probably send to us first, that says, hey, this customer is oversubscribed. We don't want to do that. We don't want you to be in that situation either. But on the other hand, on a very small system, deconfiguration of cores is a very popular option, a very good way to do that, because we're not necessarily thinking we're going to need to grow into something else. We might not have an HMC. So we might deconfigure cores, and that reduces the number of licenses and keeps you in a smaller form factor system for those folks who need it. Now, some of the tools we might use to look at processor memory and such on the system. Workshare pool, WorkSysAct. Okay, you see these screens here where we've taken some snapshots of customers. We can see, as for example, the Workshare pool screen. A customer's probably about 256 gig of memory on this, and we'll look at that and see how it's allocated and whether or not that's going to be appropriate going forward. WorkSysAct, we'll sit here and look at CPU rates. Now this one, 144.4. Now, if you know anything about processor memory and such on the eye, especially processor usage in shared operations, we know that that number can grow over 100%. Does all the time. It's not necessarily a problem, but it can be when you're not licensed for enough cores to cover that. Right? So if this says that processing capacity is 2 and you're straying into 3 and 4 cores, that could be a problem. So we need to address that. We also use other tools within performance tools, Go Perform. We'll look at histograms of processor usage. iNavigator also, lots of tools to look at memory and disk and such there as well. So we'll look at processor growth or capacity growth calculations on storage next, right? So this is a big one. I've got a spreadsheet on that I use. 3 to 5 years. We're going to get this information from you, or to status work, and we're going to look at that number right off the bat. I don't want to see it much more than 70%. It's sort of an old-fashioned number, perhaps, but that's still, I like to look at putting you in a position where we're not going to be at the top capacity at the end of 3 to 5 years. I'm going to still have a little bit of headroom, for that performance curve. Now, we start looking at NVMEs. Customers are getting caught out by this a little bit if they're not familiar. But obviously, all those are mirrored today, right? So we can't really do the same, RAID configurations we did previously. If you go far enough back, everybody was mirrored back today. But with external storage and even the internals doing RAID 6, RAID 5, et cetera, we have different configurations we have to consider on NVMe. And we only can put so many NVMe drives into a system unit before we have to go over into an expansion. So we have to plan. And that's where we start looking at a calculation for that space. On external drives, looking at SANs, we can move that out a lot further. So we have more RAID options. We have more ways to configure the disk. We have Flash Core, which we don't have internal. Really fast modules, if you remember from when IBM acquired those in Texas Memory Systems, and have developed those further. Huge capacities and excellent performance. External disk, either direct attached or not, provides a lot of benefits in that regard and a lot easier to expand down the road. We really like it for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is what we can do with flash copies as full system replication, as well as potentially migrating you later on using fiber channel and direct connect or switches to the next box that also happens to be fiber attached. And if you've seen any presentations on that before, that allows us to make that migration way simpler. Now, a very good example of my spreadsheets that I use is this one here, where we're able to take our disk capacity and we will go out, say a current used percentage growth. That's what model I'm going to suggest we're going to have over some time. And we're going to move that out over the course of 7 years and see where we need to be. For cloud, it's really important. Internal, it's really important. All of them. But this allows us to get you to a point of, okay, we know at the end of year 3 or the end of year 5, this is roughly where we might be. So let's size our disk to some point along that continuum. I mentioned communications earlier, so touch on that for a minute. 1 gig versus 10. Please understand, if you're going to move to 10 gig, that's great. If you want to keep 1 gig, that's fine too. However, we still have to map out, just like we always do, port counts. How many are 1 gig? There's certain things that are always just going to be 1 gig. We're not moving them to 10. What's our future growth look like on network? If you're going to use 10 gig, for example, we need to understand the media type that you want to use. I cannot tell you how many times we are getting caught out on this. Media type, media type, media type. Do you want optical fiber or are we going copper? 10 gig has both options. 1 gig obviously is just copper. But where we need to go, we need to do that at order time and make sure that's right. So we need to work together and understand that. Our adapter redundancy as well. Is 2 ports good enough for you? Do you want 4? Do you want double adapters? Are we doing BIOS or are we going to do 2 per? All of those are conversations that impact your costs, but also impact levels of redundancy that we're willing to accept. How far down the redundancy road do you want to go on all of this? Storage networking included. So we talk SAN, we talk external storage, feeds and speeds. We go up to 64 gig today. Are you going to need that? Probably not. Most of you are sitting at able to do 32, and we're fine with that. And you're not going to saturate it. So do you stick back to 16? No, that's not really worth it, although it probably would work, but it's not really worth it. Most of the current switches are 32, or we can get 32. And that's where a lot of our customers are. And that SAN 24B, the old standby, version 6 or 7 is basically where we're at, and we'll have 24 ports max on that guy, and we usually configure about 16 of them, hopefully to give you a little bit more space. Now, it's great to fill all these ports up. We can fill them all up all day long, use every single port on every single card, but sometimes we leave a few open, and the reason we do that is to look at upgrades down the road, whether or not we can connect a new system into that same switch and accelerate our migration to the new box, right? Same thing here, adapter quantity and ports, same thing as with communications. How many of them per LPAR, how many of them per BIOS? Provisioning for tape and VTL, right, is also an issue. How many of those cards do you want for those platforms? How many do you need? 1 per LPAR? Do you want 1 and share it? Decisions that we need to make. The OS upgrade is not just an OS. There is a lot more things to go with it, a lot more that we actually provision and work through, both in FSPs, HMCs, etc. We get into situations with a UAK that an access key might be expired and we have to get ASMI access to do it. You don't have an HMC, we've got to get there directly. It takes a little bit more work. So understanding the interrelationship between all these parts is very important. And we frequently do HMCs and FSPs along with, and HMC, lots of acronyms here, along with an OS upgrade. We know 7.4 going away here in, well, I guess regular support, end of September. Lots of upgrades in plan with that, as I mentioned, and there is a service extension available with that starting October 1st. Again, you're probably better off to avoid having to do that if you don't have to. There are certain levels of IBMI that we need to be considering when we're moving systems, right? So if you're on Power 11 with 7.4, you've got to be on TR12. If you're on Power 11 7.5, you got to be on TR6. Power 11 needs a specific HMC level in order to run, and it only works on a certain model of HMC. So let's build an upgrade schedule that keeps you in check, so we're not having to deal with all of this at the last minute, right before we're trying to upgrade. We have any number of upgrades that are stalled simply for that reason. Let's try to avoid that. Backup recovery, let's a couple of topics on that. Is it time to switch technologies on an upgrade? Lots of customers moving to VTL, but surprisingly, maybe not, depending on how your view is on this. A lot of folks staying with tape. LTO 8, LTO 9, plenty fast, lots more capacity. We support Falcon Store and Cybernetics generally, both in our cloud and on-prem. Maybe it's time to go that route. Maybe it's not. Really, that's another conversation to have with you. On tape adapters, a lot of the SAS adapters, if you're doing SAS on tape, still work up to about LTO 8. Beyond that, we have to have some considerations on LTO 9 and forward. We have charts, we have information, we can help validate that for you to make sure that you've got a compatible tape, a compatible card, but also really compatible cables that actually make that happen when we do an upgrade. Sometimes we use the old drive to migrate, and then we move over to the new tape after the fact. LTO guidelines, that used to be like an N-1, 2 concept. It's not necessarily the case anymore. You remember the LTO 1 through 7, reading tapes 2 generations back right from the prior. Well, LTO 8 sort of does that, except it's just 1, LTO 7 and 8. LTO 9, read and writes LTO 8 and 9. LTO 10 can only do LTO 10. So a few more considerations with that. We might not actually be able to do as far down that road backwards compatibility as you like, which is why we tend to end up attaching the old drive to the new sometimes. A little bit on BRMS. The BRMS upgrades, a lot of folks are struggling with this. They reduced support for BR1 in 2025. We're moving a lot of clients to BR2 at this point because that's really the future direction. I will say, some folks are staying on it if they're on 7.4 and 7.5, and that's okay. If you're going to 7.6, you really need to be looking at that. Now, different reports on how long it takes to really do that or how complex it really is to move, but there are a couple of PTFs for 7.5 and 7.4 that help with this. There's a link here in the deck for more detail really on all of that. But BR2, remember, is a priced-in product by Core, and we have to get that product in order to then install it. So if you're a BR1 user, BRMS user today, 7.4, 7.5, looking to upgrade, please make sure you bring that up to us because we need to, and we'll be asking that question because it is important to nail down. State of play on HA and availability. As Steve said this morning, it might not be top of mind as much because a lot of folks have already done this and gotten to that point, so it's not really the #1 issue anymore. But we're still advancing a lot of this. So we're moving from, say, Mimics or Terra QEDD, we're moving to Power HA with flash copy, full system replication, or cloud, for example. We have a lot of cloud customers doing a cold DR in cloud just with VTL, or they're doing it as a migrated cloud with high availability software to get us to that point. And of course, as always, test. How many folks don't test? And there are times I hear, wow, we don't really test it. Yep, you're not alone. It's unusual. It's great when you do. So please test. You really don't know if it works unless you do. So full system replication, as I mentioned, full system flash copy, all of that needs external storage. And it's, again, another reason why folks have been moving to external storage, or at least looking at external storage for this. Flash copy has considerations, right? Not really giving you some way to do PTFs or upgrades during roll swaps. It's just a copy. So, don't be, I guess, shied away from the shiny object, right? We have to look at really the details of what is your goal by moving that direction, and that's going to determine which one of these technologies makes the most sense for you. So just overall, some considerations on migrations and upgrades. Environmental, rack space, power, cabling, right? We mentioned this in every upgrade. Install timing. Do you want to do it on weekends, weekdays? Is it staged in? We're going to do one now, one later. Are we upgrading one system, testing it, then upgrading another? Engineer resources. Are we coming on site to do this? We do a lot of upgrades remote. It's no problem. Do you want us on site for it? And if it's a full system upgrade, maybe we do. Maybe we want to do hybrid, or everything has to be local. It depends on the customer, depends on the situation, right? We do all of the above. And of course, authorizations of systems, we do get stymied by this from time to time. We need the right access. You need the right access to be able to give to us, to be able to get to patches and fixes and software downloads and all these sorts of things. As well as if you're in a colo data center of any kind, obviously there's authorizations to get into centers. So we need to make sure that we can do that. All physical stuff. So we're just about at the end of time. I think we're just getting to the end here, but this is a collaborative effort. So everybody to understand that and be, just be prepared. It really is a great opportunity to strip everything down and revisit how you've done things in the past. Some folks will just do everything the way they've always done them. And you know what? In some sense, that works. But you sometimes avoid new technologies and new ways to do things that could be really beneficial to you. So let's step back. Let's take a look at what you have, and let's see if there's a better way to accomplish that. And let's hit all the buttons, hit all the check boxes to make sure it's all set to go. So just keep asking questions. The more we ask, the better it's going to be. Thank you all very much. I hope you have a great rest of the conference and on tomorrow as well. And I guess with that, I'll take it back to Tom. So we have, I don't see anything in the chat, any questions or anything.
Thank you, Kevin. Great content as always. Thank you for speaking. If anyone has got any questions, then now is a great time to ask. If you think of them a little bit later on today and you want to still submit them, please, you are more than welcome to do so, and we'll pick those up next in the session tomorrow, I should say. But yeah, no, thank you all for joining, and again, thank you, Kevin, for speaking. Great content. If anyone in the audience would like to join the networking hour that we have running now, there are 3 different channels for that networking. We have a security themed networking channel, we have a hardware themed networking channel, and also just like a general admin networking channel. You are more than welcome to dip in between those as you see fit. But yeah, once you leave this session, you should be given a prompt to be able to join whichever of those 3 you would like to attend. If you can't attend those, then thank you so much for being here and being engaged with the content today. It means a lot to us that you've been taking the time out of your no doubt busy calendars to be with us, and we hope you found this session and the other sessions that you've attended useful. We hope to see you all again tomorrow. But with that, I'll end the session and enjoy the networking if you have the opportunity to. Thank you very much.
Thank you.